go ahead and move them as unregistered or registered. Now typically you'll want to move them as unregistered unless they come to you and say they're registered. So with this, you can easily go ahead and move them as registered. When you do that, it will ask you, are you sure? And you click OK. And then they'll be in your system. So that way you can easily go ahead and put them, like put the kids into religious ed, or you can then go post contributions to their record, or put them into ministry scheduler. It's perfectly fine once they're in your system to use them in any area of the product. Now, just so you guys know, there are some questions that are going to come through the chat that other people also have pre-submitted, and once I get to those areas, I will be covering those questions. So don't think I am not answering your question right at this moment, because I will answer it in just a few minutes, I know for sure. Now, one of the questions that I did get into our pre-submitted was, say you look at your list and you find a family record that is a duplicate record. Now, actually your diocese just did some conversion information which might have created even more duplicates for you. They are working to go through those records for you, but in the meantime, if you do find families that might be duplicated in the system, that's perfectly fine. What you'll just want to do is contact the diocese, specifically Chad's one of the best people to make sure that they know this information, but you'll contact them and they can easily merge the records together to create one record. Now, the one thing you will need to know is with each family record there's a family DUID number. That stands for the unique number for each family, and you will need to know what is the unique number for the family that is the good record, or what we call the master record, and you will need to know it for the duplicate family as well. And you will need to tell the diocese this is our good, or what we call on ParishSOFT side as the master record, and then give them what the duplicate number is as well. And then they should be able to go ahead and merge those options. Now we are looking to add into our program an option for you to do it on the parish level, but at this moment there is the option for the diocese to do it for you. Now another question was asked is, if you have a family that you search the whole entire diocese and you do not find them, say they come and visited your church and just gave you a check and you wanted to record that, that's fine. I would just always add them as a brand new family, but I would bring them in as unregistered. So when you go to add in their record, and then I would go ahead and type in their last name, click on search, and then I would click on add new family and fill out as much information as you know. Now of course not every field is required, it's just the most important fields, which is like their names and the address information. Now if you don't know the address information, you can always type in no address on file, and that's perfectly fine as well. That way you know that you don't have an address for the family. But you can easily put in as much information as you do know about the family. Now one of the common things that was asked, and there's a couple of questions submitted about this, kind of related to each other, so I'll make sure I just kind of answer all of them at one time. There was another question, and I'm not surprised about this, about email addresses for both families and members. Now with this, with the email addresses for the families and members, of course you can always have an email address for a family record and one for the member record. Now if there is more than one email address, you can always type in the first email address, semicolon, and then the second email address. And when you go ahead and type in the second email, then it should then, when you save it, allow you to save it correctly. Now, then once you go to email, I'm going to just hold on one second. I'm going to bring up the email window. It will go ahead and load the email addresses based on wherever you selected from. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Now when you get the email addresses, it does show them here listed, all the unique ones. If you choose to send via web-based, then it will go ahead and bring up a window where it will have the email addresses for you populated, and you can easily email via web-based. Now with the sending web-based, we do need to have your provider listed into our system. To have your provider listed into our system, you will need to go ahead and contact our support team. And once you contact our support team, they'll give you the information that we need to be able to enter it in. Now, when the email addresses are here, there is a comma in between each of them. So if you want to be able to copy these and paste them into where you want to go, you don't want to do it from here because it's not actually going to work in your email area. So what you want to do is select our Send Outlook option. So when you get the email addresses, you'll want to click on the Send Outlook option. When you do that, then on the right hand side, if you got an error message, we'll go ahead and give you the email addresses with a semicolon, and that's what you want to make sure you copy. Now to be able to send via Outlook, you do need to have a few things, like you do need to have Outlook installed, you do need to be using Internet Explorer, and then you do need to have the Internet Explorer ActiveX controls set up correctly. Now in the error message, if you don't have things set correctly, it will tell you to go to our help guide to get more information about it. And it is right here in our help guide. If you go to help and then family directory help. Once you go to family directory help, on the right hand side, if you select communicating with families and members, and then select the option that says how to send an email, it will give you the step-by-step for both sending via web-based and sending through Outlook. And if you go down to the section for Outlook, the first line with this little light bulb says to use Outlook, you need to have both Outlook and Internet Explorer installed on your computer. And then it says you must have the Internet Explorer and you must have Internet Explorer ActiveX controls enabled. And if you actually click on this Internet Explorer ActiveX controls, it does give you the step-by-step instructions on how to make that change in your Internet Explorer to make sure that it will enable those settings. So again, the help guide does give it to you. If you have any troubles with this, you can also contact our support team and we should be able to help with any of those. Now, another question that was pre-submitted was, and I'll talk about this more once we get to that area, but a lot of times you'll have an email address for the family and not one for the member. That's perfectly fine. Like for example, I have two family email addresses here, but if I go to the member details, and then under the member details of Michael, I know I don't have an email address, and that's fine. Most areas of our product, if they do not have a member email address, it will automatically pull up the family email address. This does include areas like religious ed and Ministry Scheduler both pull the family email address if the member blank email address is blank. So it does give you that option. Now if you have a space typed into the email address field of the member, it does count that as an email address, so you may need to remove that for it to pull the family. So I'm just making sure I've covered all of them so far. Now another question that has been asked is that when you're entering address information, if you have no address on file, what do you put as the zip code? Just type in your church's zip code. That's perfectly fine. You could also just type in the zip code as 000, 5 zeros, and that's fine as well. You kind of get to pick what you want to do with the postal code if you don't have an address on file. Now another question that was pre-submitted was what happens if you delete a parishioner and you actually do need them? That's fine. If you do delete a family, it's no big deal to bring them back. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and delete this record because this is a duplicate and I'll have my diocese merge it, but say I accidentally deleted it first. I can easily go ahead and delete the record, and then once the family record has been deleted, then I can easily go back to add new family again, type in their last name again. Once I type in their last name, I should be able to see them. I can select them again and move them back into my system. That's perfectly fine. Now there is one little catch with that. If you delete a specific member of the family, so it's not you didn't delete the whole family, just one member of the family, then right now there's not really a good way to bring that member back. You do have to contact our support team, and we have to do some work behind the scenes to get that member back. Now we are looking to add in an option for you to bring back those members without contacting your support team. We just don't have that option just yet, but we are working to get that one. So again, if you delete a family, no big deal. You can always bring them back in. Okay, some other questions that were asked in the chat window during this process is one that's related to delete, so I'm going to start with that one and I'll answer some other ones. What happens if you delete several families and you don't remember which families you deleted? Now, one of the things you can do is if you know exactly which day you deleted those, you can contact our support team and we can tell you which families you did delete, and we can easily help you to bring those back if you need that. Another question that was related to the deleting is if you delete the contributions and bring them back, do you lose their contributions? No. When you bring them back in, it should bring also their contributions back as well. Now, whenever you delete a family, which by the way, we never, ever, ever recommend to delete a family. It is fixable if you do bring it back, but we don't recommend it. But if you do bring them back, if you do delete them, it doesn't actually ever delete the contributions. It just removes their name from the contributions. Now, If you do not need them, which is now kind of moving into another question that was asked in the pre-submitted, is what if a family is no longer a part of the church and you don't need them anymore? Just of course mark them as unregistered, and then if you know what their family group is, great, select that. Like if they're moved or just no longer active, that's fine, you can select inactive. Or you can always select no family group, that's perfectly fine as well. Now another question that was submitted in this chat window I want to make sure I cover is, one of the questions is, I want to be able to export a family directory with pictures. Now you can always export a list of your family directory, and I'll talk about that in just one moment, but there's not a way to actually export the pictures. However, under the Home tab, you do have the Pictorial Directory option. Now the Pictorial Directory does allow you to go ahead and get a list of the names and the pictures as well, so you can quickly see what's going on with those. Now another question that has been submitted is, and there's a couple of questions related to this. Basically, what happens if like someone who's an adult child or someone passes away? How do you kind of handle those records? Now with an adult child, you would go ahead and create a brand new family and then import the member into their record. Now several of your questions that I have mentioned already, and several I will be mentioning later on. When I did your training for your diocese, which I believe I did all of them, if Chad can correct me if I was wrong, but I think I did all of them, we handed out a tip sheet that gave you a bunch of different things, including the organization directory was on there, how to import a member into its own family. And so if you have that tip sheet still, if you don't, you can contact Chad and he can send it to you. That tip sheet will give you the full step-by-step instructions on how to make sure an adult child is into their own record. And so that will give you how to make sure everything's all set with that. Now with that importing and creating the family, creating an adult child into its own family, this instruction still tell you to create what we call like a placeholder member record. And with that placeholder record, people do say that it does come across on certain things like IQ. We've actually fixed that issue in our newest release. And so you should no longer see any of those placeholders. If you do, you can always also ask the diocese to merge those placeholder records into the actual member record, so that way you don't ever see them. Basically, if you understand the behind the scenes, it will fix all the issues you have with that. Now there's several more questions kind of all related to all these records, and so I'm going to make sure I kind of hit some of these real quick before I move on to the next area, because we do have plenty of time right now to make sure I cover everything else. One of the other questions that was submitted in this chat was related to the Pictorial Directory. Once I talked about that, the Pictorial Directory, you can turn this on or off for your members. So they can, if they are using the My Own Church, they will have access to this if you choose. Now with the Pictorial Directory, you can turn the pictures on or off separate than the Pictorial Directory. So they could just have a list of the names and address information, not the pictures if you don't want it. Now, as a reminder, you have the public checkboxes, which do come into play with the Pictorial Directory. And so they don't have to have their information published if you don't want to. It will go ahead and just leave those fields blank. Now, another kind of question is related to adult childs into their own records and just families that you may have no information towards them. And what I mean by that is there's no contributions, no sacramental information. What do you do with those records? Can you actually delete those? I would recommend not to delete them, even if you have no contributions, no sacrament information, because if you did have anything else like religious ed or ministry scheduler information, you may want to keep that information for your records. It's also nice to know if you did have the family registered at one point, if they did leave the church and then a couple of years later they come back, then you can always see, oh, I did have them. We unregistered them on this day, and now they're back. So it's kind of nice to see those records. And I think Chad would agree with me. I think on the diocese level, they would like to kind of make sure that they know how many families that people did have in their system at one point, and then left the church. So don't delete them. I would just put them in as unregistered, and again, either moved or inactive. You're not sure exactly what their status is. With the Pictorial Directory, there is a question about how do you turn off the access for the My Own Church. I'm going to get to that once we get to the administration, because that's where that is located. So I'll make sure I hit the administration Pictorial Directory at that time. Now, let me go on to the next set of questions that was asked, because this was kind of requested in a couple different weirdly different ways. I feel like it's pretty much all the exact same questions, and then for some other reason I didn't realize there was that many ways to ask the same question, but there is. Apparently there's 100 different ways to ask any question. So the next question is, what happens when someone passes away? What do you do with that record, and what happens with that record information? So first of all, the first thing what I would do is, if someone passes away, go put in the funeral information and the funeral record for that person before you do anything else. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to do that. So under Family Directory, we're going to click on Sacraments and then Add Edit Sacraments. Now when you click on Sacraments and Add Edit Sacraments, then you'll select this sacrament to be funeral. So I'm going to select that one. And then you'll type in their last name. Once you've gone ahead and typed in their last name, you can also type in their first name to narrow it down. You'll go ahead and click on Search. Once you click on Search, if it finds the record, that's great. That means someone else has already put it in for you and you don't have to do that. And that's fine. If that happens, I'll explain what that does to your records in just one moment. But if the record hasn't been created, then you'll click on Create New Funeral Record. When you choose that option, then you'll go ahead and make sure you search for the person. Once you've gone ahead and found the person, then you'll click on the little circle next to their name and you'll click on Accept. Once you click on Accept, then you will fill in as much information about the record that you know. So the most important thing that I would typically put in is what is the date of death. I would go ahead and put in the date of death as the most important thing and probably the only thing that you put in. That's the only thing you put in, that's great, because at least you know when they did pass away. And that does need to be done on the funeral record to make sure everything's all set. Now if you do have more information, like when the funeral actually was completed, what church it was at, all sorts of things, that's perfectly fine. Once you've gone ahead and at least put in like the date of death, you can click on add down at the bottom and it will create that record. Now once it creates that record, then it will show you that information in the main Sacraments area. But if you go and look at that member, it will automatically update their status to mark them as deceased. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and go to the member record. And now this person is marked deceased. Now, I'm actually not the church of registration for this record. And so with this, then I put in the funeral record, I put in the date of death, which puts it on the record, and then it marks the person as deceased for my church. But what it will also do is go to the church of registration's record and also mark them as deceased. So if you are not the church of registration, when you mark someone as deceased by putting in their funeral record, it will also update their side. And so they will also see the funeral record when you put it in. Now, of course, if they are the last member of the family, then you may also need to go to the family details and make sure the family status is marked as deceased as well. Now, if you are not the church of registration and you mark the person as deceased, then you may need to also contact the church of registration, because if they are the last member of the family, they may also want to do some things on their end to make sure that their records are up to date. Like, they may need to go in and remove the envelope number, send contribution envelopes, things like that. So you will want to make sure that you also contacted the church of registration, which you can see what mine is up at the top. And that way then they also can update that record. Now one of the questions is, what is, when you're working with the funeral record, the date on the funeral record, a lot of people think that's the date of when you're entering into the system. And that's not correct. Whenever you're working with any kind of sacrament record, when you are looking at the date, it's up at the top. So I'm just going to use funeral again as my example, just because that's the one I'm working with right now. It should be the completed on date of the sacrament itself, or for funerals, it's the date of the funeral. So it's not the date you're actually entering it on into the system. It's the date that the funeral actually happened. So if they passed away on Tuesday the 21st and the funeral is going to be Friday the 24th, that's fine. That's the day I select. Not the 23rd, because that's the day I'm entering it in. It's the date that the funeral happened. Now we'll talk about some more questions about related to sacraments in just a little bit. Let me go ahead and go through some other questions that were related to the member details and the member list. Now another question that was related to the member list, and a couple of people asked this kind of question, is when I'm pulling a report basically of different people, whether it's in the family list or the member list, I want to be able to get some specific information. Now you can do this by using, of course, the funnel icon to filter for the different people you want. For example, like if you want to see like all your 5-year-olds, or say you want to see all your 5 to 7-year-olds, so because that's about the age range where they should start, you should start looking at, need to go do the First Communion. So if you want to see those people, then of course in the member list, when you click on the funnel icon, you'll click on Advanced Options. Once you click on Advanced Options on the right hand side, you'll go ahead and click on Age Range. And you'll put in the age range you want, and then you'll click on Apply. Once you click on Apply, it will go ahead and give you that list. Now, once you get your list of people, you have a couple of different ways to get the information. Now you can, of course, click on Quick Reports and then select which report that you want. So for example, like you could easily get the birthday report if you're looking for all your 5 to 7-year-olds. And what this gives you is kind of some information about the member, including their birthday, their address information, and so on. Now, if this information doesn't give you what you're looking for, you can easily go ahead and change how your grid looks like to get you the information you want. So for example, like right now in my member list, I'm only seeing the member's last name, first name, the family last name, the family envelope number, the member envelope number, the gender, the address information, and then their age and birthday. But maybe I don't need all that information, maybe I need some other information. Of course, you can click on the Select Grid Columns. That's the third icon over from how many records per page. When you click on the Select Grid Columns, you can easily pick and choose what information you see. So you can easily choose to select some other information about the families and members. And once you choose what information you see, then of course you can click on Save and Close, and it will populate with just the information you want to see. Now once you see that, you can always click on the Save Grid Layout. When you click on that Save Grid Layout, it will save it, so every time I come on to the this area, so I'm in the member list, so it's going to save it for the member list, then it will just show me this information. Now whenever you do that, when you click on the Export to CSV, which is the, well, if you're filtering, you're going to have 8 icons. And so it's going to be your little white piece of paper with a green X. When you click on that Export to CSV, then from there it depends on what your internet browser does. Like I'm in Firefox and my computer is set up to ask me, do I want to open it or save it? I'm just going to open it for today and then I can save it. And then it downloads it and then it automatically brings up, because that's the settings I have for my computer. But yours might be a little bit different, just so you know. But then when I choose to export it and open it up, it's just going to have those fields that I actually want, because those are the fields I had on the member list, and so that's going to give me that information. Now, if an area like the member list or something else does not have the information that you're looking to have on the screen, like sometimes our grid options doesn't have everything people are looking for, then if you have not heard of our IQ program, you may want to look into that. The IQ stands for Intelligent Query. That is another way to get different reports and information out of our system, more than that we have in the Candid. And I'll be talking about that in just a little bit once we get to that tab, because there was a few things that people were looking for that you will have to do it through the IQ to get the specific information you want. So you can do all sorts of things in IQ that may not be here. But if it's already in the like family or member list, that's how you can get that information out and just the information you're looking for. Before I move off of the family or the member list, I'm going to get to sacrament, more information about the sacraments in just one moment. But is there any other questions about these two areas before I move off of it? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and look at the sacraments area. So let's go ahead and under Family Directory, I'm going to go to Sacraments, and I'm going to start with Add Edit Sacraments. I'll get to the group entry sacrament in just one second, but there is some things about the individual sacraments that were asked first. So I'm going to make sure I cover those. Now, one of the things that people have been asking about is different fields and what needs to be in those fields. So I want to make sure that I cover those first. I'm going to use confirmation as my example just because there was several questions kind of related to confirmation, so I'm going to use that as my example for right now. Now, with the records, whenever you bring up the details, of course you have the, whether it's completed, the completed on date, again, should be the date of when the sacrament happened. Not when you're actually entering it in, but the actual date of the sacrament. Then, for the parish, this should be where the sacrament was completed at. Now with this, you'll want to make sure that when you click on the three little dots, you of course then have the organization directory. Again, for custom churches that may not be listed in our system that you look for, then you can easily go ahead and use the Home tab and click on the choose the organization directory and add in custom there. Now, when you do search, you want to select where the sacrament was completed. You do not want to create a church that is called C notations or special sacrament. That will screw up a lot of your statistics, and that's not what's needed on the sacrament record itself. What you want to do is actually select where the sacrament was completed at, and then down at the bottom of every sacrament there is a general remarks area. In the general remarks, then you want to make sure that you type in the information that is noted that's special. Now with this, if you don't select where the sacrament was completed at, then you will not be able to get the specific statistics and reports that you need that is specific for your church. So you want to make sure that you do put in that information correct. Now another question that gets asked is a lot of times about the maiden name. Now different areas of our sacraments area are pulling maiden names instead of their actual last name. One of the areas is the sponsor field. When you do select the sponsor, if the person does have a different last name, maiden name, versus their last name, then it does pull the sponsor's maiden name instead of their last name. Now we know of this issue and we are working to correct it, because most of the time when your sponsor is selected, most of the time their last name that needs to be there is the married one, because that's what is going to go on the books. And so we know that needs to be corrected, and we are trying to correct that as soon as possible. So if you are having that issue, you can contact our support team and let us know you're having that specific issue, and we can link you to that issue, so that way when we do have it fixed, you can get an email communication related to it. It will also, of course, be in our release notes when we do make that change. Now, if there is a few other areas that you're having issues with maiden name, again, we are aware of the different areas that it is not coming across correctly, including some of the reports. It's not pulling the last name when it should be pulling the first. It's not pulling the last name because it's pulling the maiden name. We know of those. Baptism specifically is intended, though, to give you their maiden name if it is their baptism record, because when they were baptized, that's the last name they had when they were baptized. So when you actually look at a baptism record, it should have their maiden name because that's what it was when they were baptized. So that one we are not changing due to that's what it should be. Now another question that we were asked about is certificates. So let me go ahead and look at those. Now I'm going to look at baptism specifically due to that was one of the ones that was submitted to us. So I'm going to look at that one specifically. Sorry, just going to take a minute to come up. There we go. Okay. So when you go to do certificates, of course you want to be under the Family Directory tab under Sacraments. You do not want to do this from the member details or the member list. You want to be from the Sacraments and then add edit Sacraments. When you are here, then you can easily go ahead and select the ones you want, of course. Click on the mail merge, and you can either actually choose to just do it for all the ones based on your search or the ones you selected. I'm just going to do the ones that we have selected, and it is going to go ahead and take a minute to load up the mail merge screen. Now while it's taking a minute to come up, I do want to mention to everybody, because I do know this is coming, we will be changing our mail merge option very, very soon. So keep posted on the release notes about how we're changing the mail merge, because that will be changed in a little while. And I say a little while, I think it's coming in the next couple of weeks. So keep yourself posted about that. Now, once you have the mail merge screen open, if you do have a custom certificate, you can always make sure that you use that if you would like. Now you can easily go ahead and do all sorts of things, like you can just create new template, and then you can insert a picture of your template of your certificate and then modify it from here. Or if you already have it in that picture in a Word document, you can easily go ahead and select to bring it up just by selecting that file, and then it will go ahead and import into it if you would like. You can also choose to just input the picture if it's not on a Word document as well. And sorry, I don't know where my picture just went. I had it apparently somewhere. Not saved in the file, I thought. Now with this, with importing certificates and pictures and things like that, what you want to make sure that you do is once you do have it insert, you want to click on the mail merge tab. Once you click on the mail merge tab, you want to go to insert merge field. Once you click on the Insert Merge field, then you can insert the different fields that you want, and you can easily select the different fields. Once it is inserted in those fields, then it should go ahead and put it on the certificate. Now, if you do have any troubles inserting your templates or your pictures, it's typically just what file type you have everything saved as. So make sure you do have everything saved as the correct file type. Typically for inserting documents, it's going to be a .docx file that you want to save it as. And for pictures, it's typically a JPEG that you want to save it as. If you have it saved as other documents, I can't guarantee that it will work, but it could work. It just depends on how it was saved. If you do have any troubles with your specific documents, please contact our support team and we can make sure you can get those updated and uploaded and correct. So that was everything with certificates specifically. So the next question that was related to sacraments was about the group entry sacraments. Now, group entry sacraments, if you have not seen this just yet, it is a new feature that we just released just a few weeks ago, and it will allow you to enter sacraments in bulk. So let me start off with just kind of explaining what this area is, so for people who don't know this, you can kind of see what happens. When you select that option, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is do the step 1, which is select which sacrament you want to do the group entry for. This could be add or edit records. Once you select which sacrament, then you can easily search for the people that you want to do the sacrament for. And so you can, if you've already added in the prep year to each person's record, you can search by prep year. If you're using religious ed, you can select a term, class, or grade. Or if you aren't using any religious ed, haven't put in the prep year, you can also search just by an age range and select the kids as well. I'm going to select by a class for today, just to make it easier on myself. Once I've gone ahead and selected that, when I click on search, it should go ahead and give me a list of those people who meet that qualifications. Now with this, I have seen people who are just starting to use this, and they try to fill in every single one of those fields, so the prep year, the term, the class, the grade, and the age range. Don't do that. Just select the fields that you need, and then click on search. Then in step 2, it will ask you to select which people records you want to work with. You can always click on the first plus sign in the square to see more details about the person. Just in case you do have 2 people named the same, you can make sure you are selecting the correct one. And then to select which people you want, you click on the little green circle with the plus sign. Now with this, you can always select all of them by at the top of the list of plus signs. There is a green circle with a plus sign again. And that will go ahead and add them in all at one time on the right hand side. That way you can update all records at once. Now I do have to be very careful with this option because it will affect all of those records. And I'll explain why in greater detail in just a second. Then down below there, then you can select which fields do you want to update. And it's just going to update the general fields. And so with this, then you can easily go ahead and select whether they're marked as completed, the date completed. You can choose then to select the place. When you select the place, by the way, when you check the box next to it, it automatically does select your church that you're logged in as. So if you are a staff person for multiple churches, just make sure that you do have the correct church name in the top right hand corner, or you're going to have to manually fix that. Then on the right hand side, you can also make sure you select the celebrant if you want. And then once you're ready, there is a red note field, and it's going to forewarn you that whoever you've selected on the right hand side, it does go ahead and update all their records to have this information, including if they had information previously put it into the system, it will override that information. So for example, if I then realize that Anna Cook is in this list and I know she actually got Sacrament of Confirmation at a different church, I don't want to select her because that's going to go ahead and update her record with whatever I have down here. And we don't want that because it wasn't actually done at our church. So you have to be very careful with this group entry because it will affect the ones that are already in your system. But then once you have that, you can click on Save and it will update that information. Now once that information is updated, now if you have some more specific information like confirmation specifically, you have to put in their confirmation name. And so what you'll want to do is go back to the Add Edit Sacraments, select the records that you want, and you can even search by the completed on date. And that's what I would actually do to go back and edit those individual records. And then once you search, then you can easily go ahead and edit each record to then have their confirmation name and sponsor, okay? And so with this, then you can easily go ahead and put in that information. Once you click on Save, then on the right hand and left hand side of the records, do you see how there's this little arrow? If you click on the little arrow, it will bring you to the next record, and you can easily go ahead and then click on Edit Details and type in the next confirmation name that you need to enter in for that specific person. And then you can easily keep on doing that with each of the different records that you have. Now, I can put in a request because there was someone who asked that in the group entry that they would be able to modify all the names, confirmation names, as you're entering it in. I can definitely put in that request, but that's the easiest way to do it as of this moment. Now, I believe I've covered all the questions about sacraments. Chat me if you have any more questions about sacraments before we move on. Okay, so the next couple of questions that were just quickly asked, actually are all kind of basically the exact same. It's just which report that you want. So let me kind of explain. There's basically two questions. One is, how do you then create certificates again? And then two is, how do I make sure I send this information to the Church of Baptism? Those are both really good questions. So the first thing is, once you're here, you can easily go ahead, and if you filtered on the date range, then you can just click on the mail merge option, merge all records, and it will do all of them for the whole entire class. Like for example, I did confirmation for my whole entire confirmation class. So you can easily go ahead and just do merge all records, and it will do it for all of them for that date range. Now once you get to the mail merge screen, then if you already have a template created, then you can easily go to that template. I'm going to go to our the ParishSOFT already created one for confirmation and open up that one. And once I open up that one, it will go ahead and show me what it's going to look like for those records. And then to see what it looks like for the first family, I'm going to click on View Merge Data, and it will go ahead and show me what it looks like for the first person. Once I see it for the first person, I can always click on Next Record, and it will go ahead and show me what it looks like for the next person, and so on. And then you can easily print them out by clicking on Print at the top. Now to kind of answer the question of how do I print this information to send to the Church of Baptism, what I would do is, if you don't already have this, I would go ahead and create a template. So I would start off with New Template. And then I would go ahead and start off by inserting some fields, like I would start off with selecting the church, baptism church address 1. Maybe not. Come on. I'm really sorry. Why? Oh, for viewing marriage data doesn't help. There we go. Okay, so once we've gone ahead and let me do this again. So once I start to insert the kind of information, then I can easily go ahead and create a letter or a state. There we go. And then once I've gone ahead and created the template and then done like a letter, I could easily then, once I have this letter created, then I can easily print them out and send them to the Church of Baptism. So that's what I would do, is basically create like a letter of notification to the Church of Baptism, so that way they do have that information of the sacrament of confirmation. Any other questions about that? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the reports for the sacraments real quick, because there was one question about that was pre-submitted. Now when you run this report under Family Directory Reports, report type of sacraments, and the report either baptism, confirmation, funeral, first communion, or marriage, what this will do is only give you for the records that were completed at your church. Again, it's only going to give you for the records that were completed at your church. So if the records weren't completed at your church, this is intended just to be able to have a copy of what basically your books should look like. So with this, if you did put in the church of where the sacrament was completed at, which on here it says location, if you had selected the church of C notations or C notes or anything, then they're not going to come up. That's why it's very important for the sacrament record to show where the sacrament was completed, so that way if it is completed at your church, it does come up on this report. Now I think that was all the questions for family directory. So I'm going to move on to, there was pretty much I think only one religious ed question, so I'm going to cover that one, and then I'll get to offering. So the religious ed question was, how do you run attendance reports? Well, if you actually know religious ed, you can go into the religious ed area and you can either do it from the classes screen or the main reports area. It really doesn't matter which one you do it from. But then well, actually it does depending on what you're looking for. But when you click on quick reports in the classes screen, you do have the attendance record, which does allow you to go ahead and get the attendance sheets. And if the attendance is already filled in, it will show up on this report. If the attendance is not filled in, it will just be a blank sheet. Now the attendance sheet's blank will always give you a blank sheet, even if the attendance is filled out on the religious in the attendance area. So it would just be blank. You can also do it from the main reports area, which is basically their question, because what this will do is go ahead and do it for all classes in the term, versus the classes area will only allow you to do it one per class. So that's how you can take the get attendance reports. Now the next area is going to be the offering area. So under the offering area, the first question that was kind of asked about was batches. Now with the batches, the first question was, how do I kind of organize my batches? Because they said, you know, I have all these different types of batches and I'm not sure how to quite get it how I need it to be. My recommendation, it's all depending on your church, okay? Now, if your church gets, say, even, I would say around 100 contributions, even if it's a little bit more, that's fine. But if yours gets around 100 contributions for the whole entire weekend, then one batch for the whole entire weekend should be just fine. So if you notice, I do have a batch that is called 2016-06-19. That's my batch for this past Sunday. And it has all my contributions towards it because I have a very small church and I only get about maybe 85 contributions. So then I'll go ahead and just do one batch, which is then going to be my deposit. So when you do create their batch where it says cash total, that should be your deposit total. So that should include all your cash, checks, direct deposit, anything that's going to go towards that deposit slip, that's going to be towards it. Now, if you're a little bit bigger church and you say get like maybe 300 to 400 contributions, then I would break down your batches by service, because that's going to be a better way to keep track of which contributions are which and what totals and all that sort of things. And that way you can also run a report to see how many contributions do you get for Sunday 9 a.m. You can kind of pull those contributions if you had it by batch. Now, if you're a very big church where you get, say, like 1,000 contributions or more for a whole entire weekend, then your services may have a good like 400 to 500 contributions per service. And you don't want to create a batch that big. Trust me on that one. It will say you're going to waste a bunch of time trying to fix contributions if you had that. So what I would recommend is if you get like 1,000 contributions or more, not by dollar amount, by how many contributions you actually have to post, then I would do a batch for each about 100 contributions. That way if you do make a mistake, it's very easy to find the mistake in that area. So again, kind of how you create your batch is going to be based on how big your church is. Now, another question that was related to offering was pledges. Now, for the people who have pledges, a lot of times you may have people who pledge year after year for a certain pledge area. Like, for example, I have the Building Fund campaign. And for the Building Fund campaign, I have at least one pledge. That's actually my only pledge for this right at this moment in my system for this one. But say it was the next year, because this one start date was 2015. If they pledged again in 2016, that's fine. You can either do a whole nother fund for that, but since this is my building fund, it's one of those where it might be better just have everything under one fund because it's just a 3-year campaign. Then I would click on New Pledge and then add in a second pledge for that person. And so I would just go ahead and when I try to create a second one, it will give me a message that says, would you like to create an additional pledge? And that's fine. You can always create a second one. And then I can easily click OK, select the date I want for that pledge, and then I can easily go ahead and put in that information. So that is an option that is available to you. And then I'll talk about posting contributions towards those pledges. Now, with a family that has 2 pledges, sorry, I forgot I actually need to create that, so I need to talk about it. So hold on one second. So if a family does have 2 pledge records, when you go to post and you bring up the family, then there's a couple of things you will need to know. First of all, when posting contributions towards pledges, if the fund is marked as a required pledge, then the pledge ID does come up. If the fund is not marked as a pledge, as a required pledge, then the ID won't come up. But when it does come up, if they do have multiple pledges and one is paid off, it will bring up the second one that's not paid off. So it always pulls up the one that's not paid off. Now, if both aren't paid off, then it will bring up the older one and try to post contributions towards that, because it always wants to finish off the old one before it moves on to the new one. Now, if they are no longer going to be making payments to that old pledge and it's not paid off, then you can go back and add in adjustments, and then that way then it would show as being paid off. So you do have that option. Okay, so then the next question that was related to offering is basically how do you edit contributions? Now, with editing contributions, of course, you want to go to the contribution list. When you go to the contribution list, you'll go ahead and select the date range of the contributions that you actually want to post. You actually want to edit. Once you select the date range, you click on View Contributions, and it will show you them down below. Now, if they're in an open batch, you can easily select which ones you want to edit, and then click on the pencil if you need to select more than one. And that's typically like if you accidentally posted them to the wrong batch or to the wrong fund, then you can easily go ahead and just select the items that you want to modify, and then you can edit them from there. If the contributions are in a closed batch, you do want to go ahead and go to the posting screen and post the negative contributions towards that batch. Now, both of how do you edit if you go to the help guide of the offering, and once you go to contribution posting, it does give you all the instructions on how to post different types of contributions. And then under the viewing contributions is how you can edit a contribution record, and it will go through that process for you. And it does tell you at the top, it says if you need to edit a group of contributions, there is the instructions for that as well. So there's all kinds of help like that in the help guide. Now the next tab I'm going to go to is the ministry scheduler, because one of the questions I kind of answered before, but I want to make sure it's very clear for the person, because this was specifically, their question was related to ministry scheduler. Now things like ministry scheduler in religious ed and all sorts of areas, if the member does not have a email address, then when you come and look at their information and you want to email them from like ministry scheduler, it does then select the family email address if the member doesn't have one. So whenever you do go to email, again, it will select what is their family if they don't have a member email address. So make sure that they just have one or the other, and then it should select the correct email addresses. The next area is going to be tuition. Now tuition, this is actually one that I have to open up another internet browser, so just hold on 1 second for me, because I don't have information in that system, so I was going to change real quick. Now with tuition, basically the question was, if families are billed a bill and then they don't pay, what can we do for the next year? And to basically show that they're not going to pay or things like that. Now right now, they'll basically, your only option is, if they didn't pay their bill, is to go and apply a payment as a discount amount, and then just basically type in their full bill or whatever else they owe as a discount amount, and just basically pay off their bill like that. Now we are, and I know this is coming very shortly, at the exact, I believe at the exact same time as the mail merge option, we are going to have an option that will come across as what we call a write-off or a credit. And so down at the bottom, instead of apply a payment, you'll have an option that will also, so you'll have apply a payment, and then you'll have an option that says create write-off or create credits, which will allow you to basically say, like, the family bill was completely wrong, I'm going to start over, and that's what we call a write-off. And then the credits is, we billed them the correct amount, they only paid, say, $50 of their bill, and the rest of the bill they're just not going to pay. It's not money we're ever going to see. Then you will be able to apply a credit towards it, and then also mark that. And that way it doesn't show as a discount or that they still owe money. It will just basically be paid off, show as paid off. So if you want to wait until then, not apply any discounts, just wait until we get that credit or write-offs. That's actually been what I've been telling a lot of people to do for this ending of this year, coming up to the next year, because we will have that coming very, very soon. So that is something that a lot of people are interested in, and we are working to add that in. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it's not there just yet, but hopefully the discount at least gives you a workaround, or again, you can just wait until we get that option. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is IQ. Now, if you've never seen IQ, it stands for Intelligent Query Builder. It's a way to get reports more than just what's in our system. And so you can do all sorts of things with this. Now, to answer two people's questions, I did build queries already to answer those. So I'm going to bring up one of them to answer the first question. Now, the first question was related to offertory. Basically, they want a list, and I'm assuming this is what you're looking for, by the way, based on your question. I want to see what is the count summary report, or what we call the fund summary report. So in IQ, you could actually build a query that would go ahead and give you that information. And so you can basically create and say, I just want to see the fund description, and then I want to see the sum of all the contributions towards that fund. And then in your query conditions, you can either do it by batch ID or by date range if you want. I'm going to try it just by date range real quick, just so you can see what that looks like. And so once you select the date range, then you can easily go ahead and execute query, and it will give you each fund that was has contributions towards it, and then how much was given to that fund, so you can easily see that information. So for the person who asked about the count summary, I think this is what you're looking for. And if it is, IQ is the best way to get just the fund and just the amount. Now you can of course get the funds and the amount by under the offering tab. You can easily go ahead and go to either contributions or the reports area and do of course the date range or the posting report, which will go ahead and give you each contribution and then the fund information down at the bottom as well. Now the fund report, like I said, you can get it from IQ. We are looking to get a candid report that would just be an offering. We just don't have it yet, so that's why I'm telling you to go through IQ. Now, I don't know when that's going to come out. I just know it is something that they're looking to put in. Now, one of the questions I got just asked real quick, and it's kind of related to this. When you go to the posting screen and you're looking at your input for, of course you can post to family records or member records, and basically the question was, can we have an option that would do both? Right now you only have either one, but again, I'll put in a request and make sure your name gets attached to it to have the option of both. Now the other question in IQ, which, well, the best way to get it from is from IQ, I think, based on what was asked of the question. Basically the question was asked, we want to get an anniversary report of anything from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. Now, depending on what you're looking to do with that, maybe the family directory is a better option, maybe IQ might be better. It just depends on what you're looking for. So I'm going to look at the IQ first and then look at the family directory, because it just depends on what you're looking for. Now you can easily build one in IQ, which then says, you know, give me anything that has this specific month, and you can just type in the number, and then when you execute the query, it will go ahead and give you the information. Now both the member list and the IQ, though, when you look at the years married, it's going to give you to what's of this as of this moment. Okay, so for example, this record for June, since it was June 3rd, it's already passed, so it's going to give me 26 years. But if I select say December as my month to run the information on, then when I execute that query, hold on one second, There we go. Then it's only giving me, for this family, since it was 1963, it's only going to give me 53 years, because as of this moment, it's only 53 years. But come December, then for December 23rd, once that date passed, then it will be 54 years. So with this, just note whenever you get years married, it's going to give you for what's as of this date. Now you can get the same information actually from the family directory, and under the family directory, under the member list, when you use the funnel icon, you do have the option for advanced options, and then you can easily select the wedding anniversary years. Again, it's going to give you for what's as this moment, and then the wedding month. And so you can easily select, say I just wanted to see June's, then I can easily go ahead and just see those people's records. And then in the quick reports, we do have a wedding anniversary report as well, and it will go ahead and give you that information. So it just depends on what kind of information you're looking for with that report. Will depend on whether IQ is a little bit better, or the member list does have that information as well, just again based on the information. So member list is a great way to get it. So again, with the member list, if you click on the funnel icon, under advanced options, we do have the wedding month, and that's where you can select it by month. Now the next question was related to staff. So with staff, I'm going to make sure I cover those. So with staff, if you need to add in people to be able to access the system, the first thing that you do have to do is make sure they're in your family directory. Again, with anything you want to do, whether it's religious ed, offering, ministry scheduler, tuition, IQ, or administration, they have to be in your family directory. Even if they're in your family directory as unregistered and inactive or no family group or anything else, you have to have them in your family directory. Once you have them in your family directory, then anywhere else you can select them. So once they're in your family directory, then when you come to manage staff, you should be able to go ahead and click on the blue plus sign. Once you click on the blue plus sign, you should be able to go ahead and search for their name. Sorry, I forgot the person I was going to search for. Once you search for their name, you should be able to find them, select their name, and click on accept. Once you click on accept, then you should be able to click OK to the message and then give them the different access rights that they need. So this will include the assignments, which will be the username and their email address, the position, so what position they actually are going to be at the church, and then you will also have the access rights. So then you can give them the correct access rights for the different areas of the product. Now, there are some areas like managing our staff that if you ever go to our ParishSOFT.com website, we do have, of course, under our training section, we do have our long video training classes. Also under our support tab, we have short little videos. And so like for example, under the administration, we do have a video that talks about how to add your staff and give staff permissions to make sure that they do have the correct information. So that's how you can easily get a video if you would just like to watch a video. And also in our help guide, we also have help on step-by-step how to manage your staff as well. One of the good questions is you may have staff members who are in the list of staff just because the staff would, just because the diocese needs it for different things, including just to see a list of your volunteers who are doing, who are catechists or this and that. Now, if they're in their staff list but they don't need access to the program, because you may need to edit their position or other things, they will need to have a username. So if they do not have a username, you will need to fill it out. Now, it could easily just be their first initial, their last name, but you do need to fill it out. Now, just because they have a username doesn't mean that they actually have access to the family suite. That's where you have to go to the Access Rights tab and make sure that Primary Assignment, Grant Login, and Connect Now access is checked. Those three will actually allow them to log in to the system, but if not, then the username field doesn't matter what you put there. Just note though, once you put in a username and email address, they will be sent a email with the username, but it does not mean that they can actually log into the family suite. They will be able to log into the My Own Church side of things, but they won't be able to log into the staff side of things. So one of the things that people always ask me is, how can I avoid them getting that password? Type in the email address to start off with, being the church's email address. Click on Save. It will then send you an email with their username and password. Once you get that email, then you can go back, edit their email address to be their actual email, so that way the diocese can contact them if they need it. But then that way they don't get that initial password sent to them. So you do have that option if you would like. Now, related to staff assignments, and it is one of the questions that got asked, is once you do give them access, if they are going to have access to offering, then you do need to give people fund permissions. Now, to give people fund permissions, you actually have to go under the Offering tab and click on Funds. Once you click on Funds, then you'll click on Fund Permission at the top of the Fund Management. And once you click on Fund Permissions, then I would do is, because it's a staff person, I would click on Manage by Member at the top left-hand corner of the Fund Permissions. And then you can select a specific staff person and then select what funds that they actually have access to. Now, the other thing that was related to administration that people asked in the chat was, how do you turn on or off the Pictorial Directory? What you want to do is, under Administration, click on Organizations. Once you click on Organizations, then what you want to do is click on Edit Organization Details. Once you click on Edit Organization Details, then up at the top there is an option that says Additional Organization Details, and you want to click on there. When you click on Additional Organization Details, then on the left-hand side is going to give you the option to turn on the Pictorial Directory, separate than the My Own Church. Now, the last question I was chatted out, and I'm going to have to actually ask Chad again on this one way. So I'm going to try to give him vocal access if he doesn't mind. The last question I was asked is, how do we put in people who've put in the safe, who have done the safe environment workshop or the Virtues? Now, there's different things that I recommend. I forget what Chad wants you guys to do, so Chad, if you don't mind, I'm going to unmute you real quick, and if you can answer that question, that would be great. I think that does, Chad. Thanks. No, I think that answers pretty much all the pre-submitted questions. I think I hit them all. If I did not hit one of yours, please respond in the question field, please, for me, so I can make sure I did get it. But I think that's all the questions I've had so far. So is there any other questions? I was asked a good question in the chat system again about kind of duplicate records that you find now since the diocese has done some converting of safe environment information. If you do find duplicates in your system because it was created because the diocese did this conversion or anything, any other duplicates, feel free to send them to the diocese and they will go ahead and merge those records for you. Again, you want to make sure that you get the family DUID number to them. Again, you can get that from the family list, or if you open up the family, up the top next to their name does give you the family DUID number as well. And you want to make sure that you give the diocese that number because they're going to need that to make sure they do select the correct records. But they are going to be trying to go through and find all the duplicates that they've put into the system, hopefully before you find them. But it is a long process, so it may take a little bit and you might find them before them. So just let them know if they're in your list and they'll take care of them. So I was asked a couple more questions, so let me go ahead and answer those. So the next question is, why isn't IQ a part of Connect Now? Why does it have to be purchased as an additional component? All the options, the family directory, the religious ad, offering, ministry scheduler, and IQ are all separate what we call modules. And they are need to be purchased as separate entities. And so with this, if you have any questions about those, purchasing those, you can contact our sales team or contact the diocese, especially Chad. He'll work with you to make sure that you get the modules that you do need. Now another question that was asked about celebrants, when you're trying to look for them, how can they be in alphabetical order? Well, this actually needs to be done by administrator because it's under administration. But under administration, under lookups, then you're going to have an option that says celebrants. And with the celebrants and any other lookup item, how you have them in the list, you get to pick what that order is. And so when you go to use the drop down, if you want like your celebrant at the top of the list, then you can easily go ahead and select them and then move them to the top of the list by clicking on the arrow pointing all the way to the top, and it will move them to the top of the list. So that way when you go to use the drop down menu, they're in the order that you would like. Now if you just want it to simply just be in alphabetical order, when you come to the celebrants list, you can easily select sort A to Z. And when you do select sort A to Z, it will do them alphabetical. And it will do alphabetical how you have them typed in. So for example, right now, my celebrant list is listed their last name, comma, first name. Now that's actually typically not how I recommend to enter them in because this last name, comma, first name. When you go to mail merge the certificates, that's how it's going to put the celebrant's name as their last name, comma, first name. So if that's not actually how it needs to be, so it goes on the certificates correctly, then you're going to need to click on the little white piece of paper next to their name, and then you're going to need to go ahead and make sure that you type it in the proper way. Once you then type it into the proper way, then you can go ahead and click on save, and then it will go ahead and be how it needs to be in the lookup when it mail marches. Was there any other questions? Again, we have a few more minutes, so if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me any more questions that you might have. There was another question about the celebrants. What if you wanted a celebrant who was not in your diocese? They're coming and visiting from a different diocese because they're going to do the marriage because the people really want them to marry them. That actually happens all the time, and I feel like that's going to happen when I get married. I feel like I'm going to have priests in almost every single diocese at this point. So with this, you can always add in celebrants to your lookup table. So again, under administration, lookups, and select the celebrants. Next to the arrows at the top of the list, you do have a blue plus sign. When you type in the blue plus sign, then you can easily go ahead and type in their name. And then once you type in their name and click on save, it will add them in. So it doesn't matter if they're in your diocese or a different diocese. Like if you actually don't know Deacon Bob Anderson, he is from La Crosse Diocese in Wisconsin. He doesn't mind me using his name because he's very well known and kind of on the more West Coast area, but so you can easily add them in and that's not a problem. It's just a text field, so you get to type in anything that you would like. Just make sure that you're very careful with spelling the names because if you do misspell it, then you do need to go back and fix it so the sacrament records are corrected. So just be careful with that. Now the question was, when you go to use the celebrants, how do you make them in alphabetical order when you go to put them towards the sacrament record? This is how you do it. However they're listed in this lookup table is how then that drop-down field should look like. So if you don't have them in alphabetical order in the lookup table, then when you go to use the drop-down menu for the sacrament itself, it's not going to be in that order. So you want to be careful what order you have this. So another question that was asked, that's actually a really good question. I actually was just working with another diocese that had the same issue. The question is what if you accidentally found a record that, maybe it was created before, or, it happened afterwards and people just didn't realize. What if an adult child who has a member record in its parents' record and also has a member record in their as an adult child? So they have their own family record, and so now you have two member records for the same person. Do you contact the diocese? Yes, they can merge these records. That's perfectly fine. They can easily go through those records as well. Okay, some other questions related to the lookup items and celebrants. Let me cover those real quick, and then there were some other ones about once you get into the sacrament record. Now, when you come to the celebrants list, you want to type it in how you want it to show up on the mail merge. So when you create the certificates, how is that name supposed to be? Okay, so if that needs to be their full name, not just their nickname, then that's how it needs to be here. So then when you go to the family directory and you bring up a record, I'm just going to bring up one record real quick. Hold on one second. When you bring up the record and you actually go to the sacrament information, which, by the way, another question that's kind of related to this, can you do it from the members info? Yes, you can easily go ahead and add a sacrament record from the member details. You just click on edit details down at the bottom. And then you can easily go ahead and mark different information. So from here, then, I can easily go ahead and select the celebrant, and then I can go ahead and see that information. Now with the celebrants, if the full first name is what's in the celebrant list, then when you start to type it in, you actually need to type in their full first name. But if they have like the word deacon in front of their name, you need to type in the word deacon in front of their name. And then it will bring up their name when you go to put it into the sacrament record. So be very careful with how you're entering the celebrants' names and how you are searching for them when you go to put them towards the sacrament record. So with these, sometimes you may need to, I would do is typically, if you're having some people who are having issues trying to find these, what I would do is just go and print off a list of your celebrants' names, or write them down for the person who does the sacrament records of exactly how they're listed in the list of celebrants, so that way they know how to search for it when they go put in the sacrament record. Hopefully that answers all the rest of the questions that were there. I think there was one other question I might have missed, and it says, when I go and look at the sacrament record and the member details, it doesn't have the celebrant there, but when I go to the main sacraments area, the celebrant's name is listed in the details there. That typically just means that you may have two sacrament records listed there for the person, and so I would make sure that if you go to the main sacraments area, you should see all the records, and I would see if it's listed there. If you're still having issues with it, please contact our support team, and we can take a look at those records and see what's going on with those. had another question that just came through. When you had an adult child who had contributions, and then you try to move the person with the contributions, because they had member contributions, like they had either youth group, they were in youth group and they had it then, or they're started off being in their family record as an adult child, and eventually they just said, you know, I want to be on my own, I want to have my own record. There was some issues with people being able to move those children into their own records, and we have corrected this issue, so you should be able to import members into their own family record no matter whether they have contributions or not. We did fix that issue, so that should be all set with you. So another question that I commonly get, and especially within some dioceses, if you kind of have cluster or collaboration for sacraments or religious ed information, then anytime you do have that and you need to enter in that information, whether it's like the sacrament record or put them into religious ed, you do have to import that family into your directory as unregistered in either sacrament only or religious ed only, something like that, so that you can put in those records. Again, anytime that you need to put something towards religious ed or offering or ministry scheduler or IQ or administration, you have to have them in your family directory. So I've seen a lot of churches with tons of unregistered families that they just, the only reason they're in there is either because they had to put a sacrament, because they got married at their church, or one of their children got baptized at your church. It happens all the time. Just bring them in as unregistered, or if they're not in the diocese at all, again, add them as brand new family, just mark them as unregistered, so that way you can always keep track of those records. So at this point, we are actually out of time for this session, so I appreciate you guys joining. Chad, I'm going to unmute you if you need to say anything to anybody. And thank you again. I appreciate everybody joining. Not just Chad thanks you, but I thank you for joining, because it really makes it worth us knowing these additional questions, so that way we can make sure that if we can try to get them either entered into our system, because we don't have it. Again, I'll put in those enhancement requests, so you may see an email from me in the next day or two. And we also appreciate it if there is questions that we feel like we need to make sure we cover in trainings. We do make sure that things like this, we try to cover those in trainings as well. Again, there was a tip sheet that was handed out to everybody when you took our trainings at the on-sites. If you do not have that tip sheet or need it, please feel free to contact Chad, and he can make sure you get that tip sheet. Again, it does give you some of the things I covered today, and some things I didn't cover today are very helpful that the diocese has found. So thank you again for taking this webinar, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of the day.